he really leaned on his veteran type players, and now he's going to have a much younger team down there in Jacksonville. I mean, who are the leaders on that Jaguars team? I can't think of anybody, but he had some pretty good leaders on this team when he came on board, and he had his leadership council that he was able to bounce ideas off of. But as far as adjusting scheme, I can't. Maybe John, you can. I can't think of any other time really where you could point to an example of that, other than, like I said, getting Nick Foles ready when Wentz got hurt.
You get your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. And even though there isn't a true meaningful game to be played this weekend, sorry, Pro Bowl fans, it's not meaningful.
You didn't like the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge, Jody?
They have that yesterday?
Yeah.
I haven't even seen the highlights, let alone I didn't watch it live.
There's some good highlights. You should check it out. There's some interesting. Micah Parsons won the fastest man race.
Guy. Yeah. But I read something about it. I didn't see it, but he said that Tyreek Hill didn't even try.
No, he didn't try. But I always think it's funny.
Okay. Yeah, let me get to those highlights as quickly as possible. Guys not trying. Yeah, that's my idea.
You tell he wasn't exciting. I always think it's funny, and we'll bring in Ed. I'm sorry, Ed's probably not excited by this, but Tyreek Hill has always wanted to have a race with Usain Bolt. And I'm like, Tyreek, you're insane. You're not even going to be in the same stratosphere. But these guys have such big egos. They think they can run faster than Usain Bolt. He can't even beat Micah Parsons. He better stop talking about that.
Here he is, Ed Kracz, who's got to listen to me and McMullen argue what else is new. Ed, what do you have planned for this weekend? You're going to rewatch the highlights from the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge?
Yeah, I think that's a hard pass on that. I'm sure there are some good highlights, but I'm not even sure I'll watch the game. I might have it on in the background, but
I would recommend staying away. But hey, if you like it, you like it, enjoy it.
Yeah, the Eagles got 5 players in it, so if you're missing football, I mean, we're down to 2 games here until the USFL gets cranked up here in a couple months.
Philadelphia Stars, baby.
Yeah, playing in Birmingham, Alabama.
Birmingham. Yeah, that's your town. That's one of your towns.
Well, it's my son's old town. Yeah, he lived down there for a couple of years, but I won't be going to any home games for the
Stars. Will you be going to the home game of Doug Pederson? It's actually going to be here. The Jaguars are going to visit the Philadelphia Eagles. We don't know when. We don't know the date. But I said, Ed, Nick Sirianni better start thinking about winning that game pretty quickly. It's going to be interesting. What do you think about the Jaguars landing on Doug Pederson?
Yeah, it's interesting that it happens on the 4-year anniversary of the day he won a Super Bowl, right? I mean, I guess the news kind of broke on February 3rd, Thursday, yesterday. But, today I imagine Doug will have his first press conference as the Jaguars coach 4 years after he won a Super Bowl, which is, certain symmetry to life. I like when life has that symmetry to it. And that seems to be the case here with Doug. And I think last week, weren't we just talking about Doug Pederson and why he wasn't getting any interest?
Yeah, he was. There was a big lull. It kind of picked up again last week when the news broke that Jacksonville was bringing him in again. But there was a big lull. He was their first interview like a month ago, probably over a month ago. And then he got an interview in Chicago, and we knew they weren't going in his direction because they just fired Matt Nagy, who's a Andy Reid guy, who's a Doug Pederson guy. So they wanted to go in a different direction. And then it just went silent. And all of a sudden, Jacksonville couldn't get the guy they wanted, which was Byron Leftwich. And you got to circle back. You talk about symmetry, Ed. Go back to 2016, and the Eagles, they didn't want Doug Pederson. They wanted Adam Gase, and then they wanted Ben McAdoo, and then they landed on Doug Pederson and worked out. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Same thing might happen to Jacksonville. They wanted Byron Leftwich. They land on Doug Pederson. I don't know. Super Bowl, 4 years, as you mentioned. Why are we talking about Doug Pederson in Jacksonville 4 years after the only Super Bowl title in Eagles franchise history. It still amazes me.
It really does that they won that game. I mean, and you're going to find on Twitter and all the social media accounts today all these highlights of the Eagles and, winning that Super Bowl. Of course, the Philly special. And, listen, I'll watch those before I'll watch the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Pro Bowl active. Yeah, exactly right, Ed.
But listen, I think it's a great hire for Jacksonville, to be honest. I mean, Leftwich would have been good, yeah. But, Doug has the history of working with Carson Wentz. Now, you could say he helped ruin Carson Wentz. I don't know if that would be the case, but he did have Wentz playing at a very high level in 2017, and he's got Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars have 12 draft picks. I think 5 of those are in the first 103. So he's an experienced guy who knows how to run an offense, and he could be just what they need, that emotional intelligence down there in North Florida.
Let me run something by both you guys. I want your reaction to this. Our buddy Sheil Kapadia, who, of course, covers the Eagles, covers National Football League now for Athletic, was here in town for many years, just tweeted this about Doug Pederson. Doug Pederson's strengths, capable of high-level game planning and play calling, connecting with players and his staff, adjusting scheme to players, won't meddle with personnel or defense. 2 questions: can he build a good enough staff? Can he be innovative on offense? There's only one that kind of feels like it's questionable to me. I think, as I said, the last 2 were questions that he was saying he didn't have the answer to. One he says he's pretty sure about. I'm not as sure. Adjusting scheme to players. Did Doug Pederson show that in his years here in Philadelphia? Because he was able to win the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz being the quarterback for the first 3 quarters of the season and then Nick Foles taking over. Is that an attribute you would give to Doug Pederson, that basically he can take players and plug them in, or take their strengths and redo his game plan calling? Is that a fair praise level achievement that Doug Pederson has earned?
It's curious. I'll put it that way, and I don't want to speak for Shield, but maybe he checks that box for Shield because of what Pederson and Frank Reich, even maybe to a larger extent, were able to do once they lost Carson Wentz with the knee injury out in Los Angeles when Nick Foles had to step in. They went back and watched every snippet of tape on Nick Foles' previous games, and then they kind of adjusted their offense to what Nick Foles does, and that really helped. They became more of an RPO-heavy offense, and that's kind of what led them to the Super Bowl. So maybe that's why he checks that box of being able to adjust scheme to players. But, yeah, other than that, I would have a hard time really thinking that, he did that.
Right.
But he didn't have to do it often because Wentz was his quarterback for 4 years, and except for that little hiccup when Nick Foles had to step in and lead him to a Super Bowl. But yeah, to me, he was hesitant to play young players. I think. I mean, they did play some young players late in his tenure here, but it seemed like he really leaned on his veteran type players. And now he's going to have a much younger team down there in Jacksonville. I mean, who are the leaders on that Jaguars team? I can't think of anybody, but he had some pretty good leaders on this team when he came on board, and he had his leadership council that he was able to bounce ideas off of. But as far as adjusting scheme, I can't. Maybe John, you can. I can't think of any other time really where you could point to an example of that, other than, like I said, getting Nick Foles ready when Wentz got hurt.
Yeah, well, I think that's the biggest part. I think, and we're going to try to have Shield on the show early next week, Jody. He mentioned he could probably do it, so we'll ask him. My guess is he's talking about the Super Bowl years, Doug said, where they changed the entire offense. I think people forget that the Eagles played Nick Foles at the end of the regular season. He was pretty bad. I mean, he was pretty bad in the regular season. And it was Doug who said, all right, we gotta, and it was really more John DiPilippo than anybody else. John was the one who broke down like every single Nick Foles play, tried to figure out what he liked to do, but tried to figure out what he could do well. And as Ed mentioned, they went more to the RPOs, the quick throws, the quick reads. And Nick just got really, really hot at the right time. I always called him Vinnie Johnson, the old microwave in the NBA. When he got hot, you couldn't stop him. And Nick Foles got hot, and nobody could stop him over that 2-week span. And, whoever you want to give the credit for, Doug Pederson, Frank Reich, John DiFilippo, they were all involved. It's interesting, though, where people land. I say the same thing with Howie. When people say, well, the good picks are Joe Douglas or Andy Waddle. The bad picks are Howie Roseman. Howie's in charge. So if you're going to give him the credit for the bad picks, you got to give him credit for the good pick. Exactly. Same thing with Doug Pederson. He's in charge. It's his offense. And I will say, Frank Reich, I think you were there, Ed, when Frank, I know Les was there after the Super Bowl, graciously gave us about 15 minutes just by ourselves. And he was just gushing, obviously. And he was gushing about Doug Pederson. And I remember, and I'll never forget, because Frank doesn't curse. Anybody who knows Frank. And he came as close as he did to ever cursing. He called Doug a freaking star as a coach. So for all those people that want to say it was Frank Reich, Frank will be the first to tell you Doug Pederson is a freaking star as a coach, as he would describe it. So that would be my take.
That was a whirlwind post game. I believe I was there, and I think it was a freaking rock star.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah, he added the word rock star in there. I don't know if Doug's playing air guitar like Donovan. Maybe that's why. But I think it was a rock star. But yeah, Frank really praised Doug up and down. Listen, Doug to me is a quality person, and I'm glad he's got this chance to, head up another team, and maybe he has some say, a little bit more say in how he puts together his staff. That's going to be interesting to see how he builds that out. Trent Baalke is, a lot of people didn't want to play, coach under his thumb, but it looks like maybe they're going to bring Rick Spielman in to be kind of the head of the operations. And, let's see what kind of say Doug has, because I think personally, he'll build a fine staff. He knows enough guys in this league now. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's got some clout to him now. It's going to be fun to watch what happens down there. It's almost going to be like Eagles South. We're going to be keeping an eye down there, on what goes on in Jacksonville.
I was saying, Ed, how about if you think about the AFC South? Frank Reich is there. Who knows? Yeah. Carson might be there. So you're going to get Frank Reich and perhaps Carson Wentz against Doug Pederson twice a year. What if Jonathan Gannon ends up in Houston? What the AFC South is going to be exciting for Philadelphia fans.
Yeah, they're going to have to start televising that locally, those games, aren't they? So we can kind of watch those matchups.
Never going to happen. Pittsburgh always wins here in this town. Well, the AFC game is always the Steelers. They've done research on it for years. It annoys me because I'm hoping that it's the Jets from time to time, and it never is. Sorry. Even with Dougie P or Carson, they didn't bring the Colts in at all this year as the AFC game.
Yeah, Jacksonville doesn't have
Doug
any
either.
Doug better get used to London too. He better like those trips. Jacksonville.
That's very
cool. But it's going to be cool because the Eagles play the AFC South, right? They go to I think they go to the Colts, so they'll see Reich and maybe Wentz, and they host the Jags, and they go to Houston if Gannon's there. I mean, what's going on down there in Houston? Can't they pick a coach?
They got to make a decision.
Yeah, sure.
Now they're mixed up in the Brian Flores stuff, so I guess we'll go there with you since we have to ask you. I mean, that is such a mess. And they've named their sort of, not named officially, but, people like John McClain, friend of the show here, is plugged in as anybody in Houston. It's down to Jonathan Gannon, Josh McCown, so very Eagles tint, and Brian Flores. I don't know if they're going to hire Brian Flores, so that would mean Jonathan Gannon or Josh McCown. What? I'll ask you, what the heck is going on in Houston?
That's a good question. I wish I knew because, listen, the Eagles, I mean, it's still very early in the offseason here, but with this whole Gannon thing up in the air, I don't think Gannon's at the Senior Bowl this week. I think he's
got an interview. Yeah.
Yeah, so Stoutland's there, but, this is a team, obviously, that needs help on defense. And your defensive coordinator is busy interviewing or waiting to hear from Houston, and he's not on hand in Mobile. again, it's early. I'm not sure how big of a factor is, but that has to be a little bit concerning that he's not kind of all hands on deck. He's not all in, I should say.
Be where your feet are.
Yeah, be where you're. And right now, it feels like his feet. He really wants this Houston job, so Houston has to make a decision. And it would be surprising, if they went with Brian Flores. But boy, I wish they would. I mean, Flores is a qualified guy, and he had the courage to come out and speak his convictions, and I give him a ton of credit for that. And now it's almost like when you see these hirings, you're almost in the back of your head going, well, geez, another white guy gets a job over, some qualified, maybe some other qualified, candidates. And, I hope he gets it. I would love to see, like an Eric Bieniemy get in, a job. And, Todd Bowles was mentioned, and Byron Leftwich. I mean, there's some qualified guys out there that just aren't getting jobs. And, that now is in my head. It's like, well, how come? Why aren't they? And I give Brian Flores a lot of credit for kind of bringing that awareness out a little bit more than maybe, all of us have really given thought to in the past.
And the Houston job, kind of like the Jacksonville job, is not the best job to get. And sorry, any Texan fans who may be watching. I see I annoyed some Steeler fans because I said I think it's wrong that they always show the Steelers game as the other game in town. So now I'll take off the Texan fans. That organization isn't in good shape. They don't know what they're going to do with their quarterback. They've had a couple of bad years in a row. They had a messy firing of their coach, who they brought in for 1 year and never even gave a chance, and then turned around and fired him. I don't know if I'd want that job. I'd rather have the Jacksonville job than the Texans job as of right now. So what happens if Brian Flores gets that job? Does he then afterwards say, well, they mishandled me again? Well, they mishandle everybody. It's not just you, Brian. It's not because you're African-American. It's because they're just a bad football organization.
Yeah. How do you, in fact, I'll throw this in, Ed, and then you can, how do you, if you're an owner in this league, look, I agree with a lot of your sentiments and what you said about Brian Flores, but if you were to hire him now, how do you fire him if you think he's not doing a good job? And
Right.
I'm talking 2-3 years down the line, you're going to get killed. Doesn't that affect your thought process? This is such a difficult, layered problem. It really is.
Yeah, but listen, wins and losses are what you're going to base your decision on. It's a results-oriented business, and if 2 or 3 years down the line, Brian Flores is sitting at 13-26 or whatever, then okay, then there's a justification. But when you look at the Dolphins, I mean, I think he had 2 winning seasons down there in Miami, which in a row, which isn't easy to do, and so really there was no great.
Well, let me throw this curveball at you then. We're talking about a Super Bowl winning coach here, fired 3 years off, winning Super Bowl. I mean, there have been coaches who have gotten fired for reasons that have nothing to do with what they did on the field. Probably David Culley being a perfect example this year. And to a certain degree, Brian Flores from as you said, a winning perspective, but he just didn't get along with the owner. Same thing with Doug Pederson and Jeffrey Lurie, where Jeffrey Lurie saying, I don't like your coaching staff, so you're out. I don't care if I got this Lombardi trophy. So I don't know how you can legislate that, that to me is the most difficult problem.
Yeah, I guess if Flores and whoever the GM is in Houston or the owner, they're not getting along, and Flores is 26-13, and you fire him, then then you might have issues. But listen, I mean, that's down the road. I always try to be where my feet are, right? I mean, what can Flores do today, tomorrow? Each day he's being evaluated, and maybe notes are kept if it comes down to a divorce at some point in the future. So there isn't a big, stink that would arise from any kind of firing. But certainly he's qualified in my book. And to answer Jody's question is what does he bring to Houston? Or I think Deshaun Watson probably stays, and not having Watson last year was, that was a big handicap for the Houston Texans, not having a real quarterback. Davis Mills was okay. Tyrod Taylor, I think, started the year, got hurt, but
But hold on, let me hop in there, Ed.
Sure.
He stays for Flores, but he wouldn't play for David Culley?
Yeah, I don't know the dynamics of all that, Jody, but
I think Jack Easterby is the problem. And as long as he stays.
Jack Easterby's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
No, but I thought he liked Flores. I thought, that was one reason he wanted to go to Miami. Watson, one of his preferences to be traded was to Miami. I thought it was because of Flores. So I think, my understanding is they have a good relationship. So maybe, Flores is able to come in and kind of smooth that relationship over. And Watson gets back on the field. Of course, he's got all those other issues that, here we are a year later that really haven't been resolved yet, which is strange. But, maybe Watson stays. I don't know, because of Brian Flores.
One more Flores question, and this came to light within the last 24 hours. And I'm sorry, I either don't understand it or don't believe it. He got the text message from Bill Belichick, congrats on getting the job. It was before the job was ever actually given to anybody, and then he didn't get it. Belichick explained it away as, I just made a mistake. I meant Brian Dable, not Brian Flores, and I just sent the text to the wrong person. Okay, I'll believe all of that. Now Flores is actually claiming that he believes Belichick helped Dable get the job. Both Bryans worked under Belichick in New England, and it's Flores' belief that Belichick wanted Dable to get the job, and he actually lobbied for him and has influence with the New York Giants. I know that the NFL is a tight little circle for as big a corporation as it is and as much money as they generate. There is a nice little core of tight individuals. But Belichick is 2 friggin' decades removed from being with the Giants. Does Flores really make us believe that Belichick is in Mara's ear to tell him who he should or shouldn't hire as the head coach of the year? You buy any of that?
Well, I mean, it's almost like he said type of situation. Unless there's documentation, I mean, I guess they're Brian Flores' beliefs. You don't know, at what emotional state he was in when he made those remarks. If he's still very fired up about this, which I can't blame him if he is, and if that's what he believes, it's hard to refute that. But unless there's documentation with some of this stuff, like the whole being paid to tank thing down there in Miami.
Well, that I kind of do believe.
Yeah, and then of course Hugh Jackson jumps on that and says, I was paid $50,000 to lose each game, but there's got to be some documentation. But I think this is just Brian Flores' belief that Belichick helped him get that job, and there's probably no documentation to it. But I'm not going to refute how Brian Flores feels emotionally about this. Maybe he has good reason to believe that. I don't know. So I'm not just going to dismiss it out of hand and think it's just kind of the rantings of some bitter man. I think maybe I'm sure he actually believes that, and if so, that's how he feels, and I don't know any differently if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, one of the problems, and we had Dan Lust on earlier in the week, one of the best sports lawyers in the industry, and he kind of mentioned, some of the Chargers came across as throwing things against the wall as opposed to being more focused. The problem with the accusations that as you mentioned, Ed, look, Denver, we'll use Denver in this example, the accusations against John Elway. Well, there's 5 other people in that room. So, it's going to be pretty concrete as to what went on from those other witnesses, so to speak. And the same thing with the New York Giants. The Giants put out an emphatic statement. They are very confident that Bill Belichick had no knowledge. But we all know, you just mentioned the Senior Bowl. There's people talk in this league. People get behind the scenes, and we're going to have Randy Mueller on in the second hour. A lot of these guys know who they're going to hire the minute they fire a coach, and that's the way it is. And I don't know how you fix it, but this is a big mess for the NFL. We'll just leave it at that, because I want to get back to the Eagles with you, and I want to get back to the Senior Bowl, because with the Howie Rosemans was there, and Jeff Stoutland, as you mentioned, and obviously all the scouts are there. The owner's son was there, poked up on the sidelines. Have we started the succession plan? Jeffrey Lurie's 70 years old, and obviously wants to keep the Philadelphia Eagles in the family. Is Julian Lurie going to be a name Eagles fans got to get used to quickly?
Sure sounds like it. And if you're asking me if I have a problem with it, I certainly don't. He went to Harvard, presumably a pretty bright guy. He's been around the team, around the business, the front office side of things. And, I have a son who's 25 years old, and he went to NYU, and he's a very smart kid. And if I owned a football team, you're darn right I would have him riding shotgun with me through the whole process and, be grooming him to take over. And I know what he's doing in his life at the age of 25, which is pretty good. So yeah, I have no problem with Julian Lurie stepping in. I think he's a very heavy analytical type of guy. He really follows the analytics, but the Eagles are doing a lot of that anyway. That's kind of how he was raised within that front office, is with the analytics. So I think it's a fine succession plan. It certainly beats selling it to somebody else and having him threaten to maybe move it out of town. The Eagles out of town, that would really suck. But
I don't think you have to worry about that. Back in the day, you had to worry about it, but not now.
Yeah. I don't think Jeff Floyd's going to be selling to Norman Brayman or Leonard Toews. So I don't think you have to worry about either of those two. Yeah. I don't want to take you another direction, Ed, but Senior Bowl related as John went. Couple of your compatriots, Eagle beat guys who were down there in Mobile, said that the Eagles were paying some pretty good attention to the quarterbacks who were in Mobile, Alabama this week. And it was just a matter of weeks ago that Howie Roseman said emphatically, Doug Pederson emphatically, that Jalen Hurts is the Eagles quarterback. As my partner likes to point out, they weren't under oath at the time, so they could change their mind. Most people thought changing their mind meant either acquiring a Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. Are the Eagles going to throw us all a curveball and draft a quarterback with one of those 3 first-round picks, Ed Kracz?
It depends how much they fall in love with one. I mean, they're doing their due diligence. I mean, it was reported by Chrissy Freud, who works for SI, that, the Eagles did meet with Carson Strong out of Nevada. So I think it's just due diligence. I don't think they're going to spend one on the first round unless, maybe Kenny Pickett's sitting there at 15 or 16 and they love Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral or whoever. I don't think so, though. I think, if anything, Howie would probably trade one of those picks and try to get a pick in 2023 and just make 2 first-round picks. But I don't think they're going to go quarterback. I think there are so few quarterbacks that are going to go in the first round that if the Eagles want one of these top 7 guys, the 6 who are at the Senior Bowl and Matt Corral who isn't, I think you could see the Eagles possibly taking one on day 2 in the second round. Because listen, I wrote about the history of the Eagles drafting quarterbacks, and since 2010, they've drafted 6 quarterbacks. So that's an 11-year, 12-year span. That's 1 quarterback on average every 2 years. The last quarterback they took was Jalen Hurts in 2020. So I believe they're going to take a quarterback. Huh?
They're due.
They're due.
Take a quarterback per your numbers.
That's my contention, is they're due, and they are going to take one. I just don't think it's going to be in the first round unless there's somebody they really love during this whole process that's still there at 15. But if not, I think they'll take one on day 2.
Well, it's interesting because they do have, as you mentioned, they start the process with the 3 first-round picks, numbers 15, 16, 19, as we stand here today, Ed. And does that create a sense of urgency, not only from the draft perspective, but them as assets in the fact that you can go and get a quarterback, whether it's a veteran, trade, whatever you want to do? But the point I'm trying to get to is you don't often have 3 first-round picks. You don't often have this capital to make a move, to do anything you want to do, in essence. Now, you might have to overpay a little bit to get a Russell Wilson or somebody of that nature. But in theory, if you can convince him to come here, you can get it done because you have the capital. Does that increase the sense of urgency at all? And I've heard, and I'm in this camp as well, Ed, I don't think they're taking 3 first-round picks. I think they're going to try to trade one, but that doesn't mean you can trade one. You know, I think people are just assuming, well, they'll kick one back and they'll get an extra one in 2023. That's not as easy as people might think. So does having the 3 first-round picks right now create a sense of urgency for Howie Roseman?
Listen, I think they're going to build the team around Jalen Hurts. I honestly do. I mean, and we all know why the Eagles have 3 first-round picks, right, John? Because Anthony Patch and Andy Weidel did a great job getting him. It wasn't because of anything Howie Roseman did, right? Howie Roseman gets no credit for getting 3 first-round picks. It's very rare, you're right, and you have to give Roseman credit for that. But I don't think it's a sense of urgency to find a quarterback. I mean, I think they are genuinely happy with Jalen Hurts. And, this whole Russell Wilson speculation, Deshaun Watson, I mean, it makes for good, print media to write stories about, sports talk radio, doing conversations with, but I just don't see it. I mean, Nick Sirianni was emphatic when he said, there are no secrets here. Jalen Hurts is our guy. How do you walk that statement back in the offseason in that locker room with that team who is fully behind Jalen Hurts? And Devontae Smith, it was interesting, said on Sirius Radio the other day that Jalen Hurts called him after the Cincinnati Bengals won the AFC Championship and said, did you see that? He goes, that can be us. We can do that. I mean, there are people in that locker room that love Jalen Hurts. And
there is. But can I tell you how I would walk it back, Ed? I'll tell you right now how I would walk it back. I wouldn't say anything. I would say, guys, this is Russell Wilson.
Right. Can he show you his Super Bowl ring?
That's how I would walk it back. And trust me, they would, it's sort of like the same thing. I was worried about Nick Sirianni and how he would be accepted in that locker room because so many people in that locker room love Doug Pederson. But those guys know it's a business. They go through it every year. And ultimately, look, there were some questions. I mean, I don't think it's pretty evident Fletcher wasn't happy early in the season. But Nick Sirianni slowly won everybody over, and they gave him a chance. Doesn't mean they don't like Doug Pederson because they like Doug Pederson. But I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think they love Jalen Hurts. And they'd love to have Russell Wilson. I think those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
I don't know. I think it's a young locker room. I think they're all in on Jalen Hurts. I think you bring a 33 or 34-year-old guy in here who was on the back half or back quarter of his career. I'm not sure that's an easy sell. And you mentioned that it took, Sirianni some time to win over that locker room with the veterans. I think if you get rid of Hurts, it's going to take time to win over that locker room, whether it's Watson or Wilson, because I just think they're so all in on Hurts, and they really believe that they're building something as a young core that's going to lead to success over these next couple of years. And I think if you drop that bomb, if you will, into the middle of the locker room, that's going to be tough to overcome, in my opinion.
All right, last thing from me, I need help from one of you two guys. So I'll ask you, Ed, and if you don't know, I'll turn to John. Boston Scott is a 2-sport star? I know he's a good touchdown scorer against the New York Giants, but what the hell else can he do well enough that he's now considered a professional athlete? It goes right over my head. I don't get the whole gaming thing. Can you guys explain this to me?
Let's see if Ed does.
Well, I'm kind of hoping John writes something about it because I certainly don't understand it.
Well, he's really good. I was told he's really good at a race car game where the race cars play soccer. He's really elite at it. So he's a 2-sport athlete. That's what I was told.
Hey, I know gaming's huge though, right? I mean,
it is.
Yeah, but I don't really pay attention. I don't play video games.
No, I don't.
But listen, Boston Scott's 25 years old. I mean, sure, he's right in that wheelhouse of that generation, the big video games. So that's pretty cool, actually, that he's
But I know he's really, really good at it. Like it's not like he's top, not even 1%, like top 0.1% or something like that. So he's really good at it to a almost frightening degree, evidently. That's all I know.
More power to him, but it is something that I just don't comprehend. But that's okay. Hey, If he's got another gig that he can spend some quality time with during the offseason, put a couple extra bucks in his pocket, more power to him. Maybe he'll play for less for the Eagles. No, nobody takes less money because of their other gig. Tom Brady always got his millions, despite the fact they had a wife who was making it 2 or 3-fold more than he was. Yeah. All right, Ed, we need you to get on the record. Who's winning the Pro Bowl?
I was going.
Come on, this is huge.
Yeah. I don't even know who play. I don't think it's AFC versus NFC. I don't even know who. Is it? Or did they do
gamers against non-gamers? If that's I want Boston Scott on my team.
Yeah, right. I actually, you know what? I want Boston Scott working out 8 hours a day. I don't want him wasting any time on video games. I want him in that weight room.
That's going to come back to haunt him in this.
Yeah. I want him in the playbook, man.
They're going to say his hands are too weak from playing the video games, or
right.
crippled like
tunnel syndrome that develops. Listen. I don't know if it's NFC or AFC, but I'm an NFC guy. I know Jody's an AFC guy. I'm going NFC, Jody. I'll bet $1 the NFC East wins, or the NFC.
I think the NFC is favored by 27.5. So I'll take the AFC plus the 27. I don't know.
All right, I'll just say this. I'll end it with this. Ed Kracz, SI.com. You see it there. Eagle Maven. Follow him on Twitter at KratzE. SI.com/NFL/Eagles. You can read me there as well. Devontae Smith, the biggest controversy of the week. 166-pound kid saying he doesn't like cheesesteaks. Do we have to trade him now?
That's your question? No. You don't have to. Don't trade Devontae.
He got a lot of heat. He got a lot of heat for that.
Well, listen. People are very provincial about their cheesesteaks and soft pretzels. I'm fine with it, man. Whatever your diet is, as long as you're successful.
That's immediately what I said. Now, if you ask me the question, it's valid. If you ask you the question, it's valid. He's 166 pounds. He's not eating a lot of cheesesteaks. Use your common sense.
No, he could put on a couple pounds. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So I'm not running him out of town, but I would suggest he rethink his cheesesteak stance. Eddie, good stuff, buddy. We'll have you on next week prior to the game that actually matters. I know I'm underselling the Pro Bowl. We don't even know if it's the AFC against the NFC. John is singing the praises of the challenges.
I'm telling you. Go to NFLs.com, their Twitter account. Watch some of the highlights. Some good stuff. Some good one-handed catches. The race was fun with Micah Parsons. But I didn't watch it. I wasn't going that far. But I watched a few clips. I'd recommend it.
I had more important things to do, like watching Odd Couple reruns than yesterday.
They were playing dodgeball. Darius Slay had a great moment playing dodgeball. You should check that out.
You're worried about Boston Scott playing video games, but you're cool with Darius Slay playing dodgeball? Yeah. No, put that ball down, Darius. We need you to cover next year.
What did they say in the movie? Duck, dip, dodge, and I think duck again or something. It was a great movie.
No. I'm still thinking of the Odd Couple reruns. I don't know where you're watching it, but I love that show. I would love to check that out this week.
The Decade Channel. It should be on your cable if you're Comcast every day at 5:00. 2 episodes, 5 and 5:30.
Excellent.
For the Odd Couple.
I'm an Oscar Madison fan, Jody McDonald.
Hey, he's my idol. I tried to be Oscar Madison for the last 30 years and unfortunately failed. Eddie Kracz, never a failure when we've got you on. Thank you much for doing so. We'll talk to you next Friday.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the game.
Yes, the big game, the huge game, the Pro Bowl. Who cares about the Pro Bowl? All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, we are the Mac and Mac guys. We'll come back, kick a couple things around. Randy Mueller, former general manager, both the Saints and the Dolphins, executive of the year in the year 2000, going to hop aboard with us in hour number 2 on Birds 365.